Preface to the novel. The moonlight flowed quietly like water at the edge of the blue river. The night wind blew through the desolate woodland, and the cry of a baby pierced the silence. The wolf pack's guards followed the sound and found a baby abandoned beneath a stone monument at the border. Her eyes were as clear as the moon, yet without a trace of wolf. "This is useless, no wolf soul," someone said coldly. "Take it back. Or leave it here to feed the wild beasts." Another voice hesitated. Eventually, they threw the baby into an orphanage and labeled her a witch. From then on, Rain grew up in a world of ridicule, isolation, and indifference. The only light was Jessica, a werewolf girl who grew up in an orphanage. They spent the loneliest childhood together, protecting each other. However, on the night of her 17th year, her fate changed completely. Jessica told her, "Rain, you must escape. The tribe has decided to sacrifice you to the moon goddess on the next full moon." Shock, fear, and despair exploded in Rain's chest. As the two planned their escape, a new life intruded upon their world, Odett, a 5-year-old stray wolf cub. Rain gazed into those same eyes, filled with despair, and recalled the night he was abandoned. "Let's take her with us," Rain said. "She can't go through what I went through." Thus, the 3 orphans set out on an unknown journey. But little did they know that the gears of fate had already begun to turn. The moon goddess watched from the heavens. A prophecy whispered, "An orphan queen will rise in blood and fire, bringing redemption, or the end." Episode 1, The Abandoned Child. The night along the Blue River was sharp with cold, the kind of cold that carried whispers through the trees. The current rushed like liquid silver under the moonlight, and the sound of it swallowed nearly everything, except the cry of a child. It was thin, piercing, and utterly out of place in the silence of the borderlands. Wolves lifted their heads to the moon, ears twitching. 2 of the border sentinels broke from their patrol and followed the sound. Their boots crunched on frost-hardened leaves as they came to the stone monument that marked the edge of their tribe's territory. And there, swaddled in a rough blanket, lay the child. The younger sentinel crouched down, squinting. Her tiny fists flailed as though she might fight off the cold. Her eyes opened, luminous and pale, catching the light of the moon. He recoiled. "No wolf soul," he said, his voice low and edged with disdain. "She's empty." The older one stared down with a kind of detached weariness, as if he'd seen this before. "Then she's no wolf. Just another useless burden." "We should leave her," the younger said quickly. "The wild will take her by morning." But the elder hesitated. The baby's cry was raw, insistent. "The elders won't want the carcass found on our border." Too many questions. His mouth curled in distaste. "Better toss her in with the others. That orphanage. They'll know what to do." And so the decision was made. Not out of mercy, but convenience. The infant was lifted roughly, the blanket nearly slipping away as she wailed, her voice echoing against the trees. The wolves did not name her. They did not bless her. They only carried her to the ramshackle orphanage at the edge of the settlement, shoved her into the arms of a startled caretaker, and muttered one word that clung to her for the rest of her life. Witch. Rain grew up beneath that name. The orphanage was a crumbling old house with peeling shutters and a sagging roof. Its halls were filled with children who either had no parents or whose parents had no use for them. Most of them were wolf-born, pups left behind by families that couldn't or wouldn't raise them. They at least carried the spirit of the pack in their blood, the faint shimmer of the wolf's soul inside them. Rain carried nothing. At least, nothing that anyone else could see. She was a small, quiet child, with eyes the color of moonlight and hair that tangled no matter how she tried to brush it. From the beginning, the others kept their distance. Whispers followed her wherever she went, witch, soulless, cursed. The caretakers tolerated her presence but with no warmth, as though she were an obligation they'd rather forget. Her earliest memory was of loneliness. Her second earliest was of Jessica. Jessica had been dropped at the orphanage years after Rain, another unwanted mouth. But Jessica was different. She was wolf-born. Everyone could sense it. Even though she had no parents to claim her, the pack aura was there, faint but undeniable. She was fierce and bright-eyed, her laughter like a spark in the gloom. And yet, she chose Rain. When others avoided the pale-eyed girl, Jessica sat beside her. When the children mocked her, Jessica stood between them. They grew up together, two outcasts clinging to each other against a world that had no place for them. On cold nights, curled beneath thin blankets, Jessica whispered, "Don't listen to them. You're not cursed, Rain. You're just different. And different isn't bad." Rain wanted to believe her. Sometimes she did. Other times, when she caught the scorn in the caretaker's eyes or heard the word which hissed like venom, she wondered if the world was right and Jessica was wrong. Years bled together, marked only by the cycle of the moon and the slow passage of seasons. But fate, like the river, never stopped moving. On the eve of Rain's 17th year, something shifted. It was late, the orphanage hushed in uneasy sleep, when Jessica burst into their shared room. Her face was pale, her breath ragged. Rain sat up immediately, alarm rippling through her chest. "Jess. What is it?" Jessica closed the door quickly, pressing her back against it as though to keep the whole world out. Her hands trembled. "I overheard them. The matron and the elders." Rain's stomach dropped. "Overheard what?" Jessica's eyes gleamed with terror. "They've decided. On the next full moon, they're going to sacrifice you. To the moon goddess." The words didn't make sense at first. Sacrifice. Goddess. Rain shook her head, unable to process. No. That can't be real. That's just stories." Jessica's jaw tightened. "It's real, Rain. I heard them. They called you the offering. They said the pact demands it." The room spun around her. Her breath came shallow and fast. All the years of whispers, the way people looked at her like she was something less, something wrong, it had all been leading here. Not just rejection. Not just loneliness. Death. Her voice broke. "They want to kill me." Jessica crossed the room and seized her shoulders, her grip strong. "That's why we have to leave. Tonight. If we wait, they'll come for you. We have to run before they realize we're gone." Rain's mind reeled. Run. Leave the only place she had ever known. The thought terrified her almost as much as staying. But when she looked into Jessica's eyes, brimming with desperation and fierce determination, something steadied inside her. She nodded. "Okay. We run." The plan was clumsy, desperate. They had no money, little food, nothing but a pair of threadbare cloaks and each other. But the night was dark, the guards few, and fear lent them wings. They slipped through the orphanage's back gate, hearts pounding, every creak of wood sounding like thunder in their ears. The forest beyond stretched wide and endless, shadows clawing across the ground. Rain had never been beyond the river. She felt like she was walking off the edge of the world. They hadn't gone far when they heard it, a sound so soft they almost missed it. A whimper. A child's cry. Jessica froze. "Tell me that's not." Rain's heart lurched. The sound tugged at something deep inside her, something raw and aching. She followed it into a small clearing and there, huddled against a rock, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, her small body streaked with dirt and scratches. Around her neck hung a broken leather cord with a faintly gleaming charm, a wolf's fang, cracked down the middle. The child looked up at them with wide, terrified eyes. Rain's breath caught. It was like looking into a mirror of the past, herself on that stone monument, abandoned, unwanted. Her knees nearly buckled under the weight of it. Jessica whispered, "She's wolf-born. I can smell it. But she's been left here. Alone." The child's lips trembled. Don't leave me." Rain dropped to her knees, tears stinging her eyes before she could stop them. She remembered that endless cry in the night, remembered being lifted by cold hands that didn't care if she lived or died. She couldn't do it. She wouldn't. "We're not leaving you," she said fiercely. "Not ever." Jessica hesitated. "Rain, she'll slow us down. And the more people with us, the harder it'll be to hide. I don't care, Rain snapped, more fire in her voice than she'd ever felt. I won't let her go through what I did. The little girl pressed against her, clutching her cloak. Her name, they would learn later, was Odett. For now, she was just a trembling child who refused to let go. Jessica exhaled, long and low, then gave a sharp nod. Fine. She comes with us. But if the elders find us? They won't, Rain said, though fear gnawed at her. She wrapped her arms around the child and whispered, "You're safe now." They set off again, 3 shadows moving beneath the trees, bound together by desperation and something stronger, choice. The night stretched on, filled with rustling leaves and distant howls. Every sound made Rain's heart race. But with Jessica at her side and Odett's small hand in hers, she kept moving. Above them, the moon hung heavy and bright, watching. It cast silver light over the river, over the forest, over the 3 figures fleeing into the unknown. Somewhere, in the silence between heartbeats, Rain thought she heard a whisper. Not from Jessica, not from Odett, not from the wind. A voice, low and ancient, curling like smoke around her soul. The orphan shall rise. Blood shall bind. Fire shall test. She shivered. But she did not stop. Because for the first time in her life, she was no longer running from loneliness. She was running towards something she couldn't yet name. And destiny had already begun to turn its wheel. Episode 2, Shadows on the Hunt. The forest stretched endlessly ahead, the trees crowding together like watchful sentinels. Their branches whispered in the night air, scattering silver light across the pathless ground. Rain pulled Odett closer, wrapping the child in her cloak. The little girl's breathing was shallow, but her small feet kept moving, stubbornly keeping pace. Jessica led them, her sharp eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of pursuit. They hadn't spoken much since leaving the orphanage. Words felt dangerous, like sparks that might catch fire in the silence. But the fear was thick in the air, a weight pressing on them with every step. It wasn't until the 3rd hour of walking that Jessica finally muttered, "They'll know by now. The matron will have found your bed empty." Rain's stomach tightened. She pictured the discovery, the whispers spreading, the elders summoned, the decision made. "Do you think they'll chase us?" Jessica didn't look back. "Not think. No. They can't let an offering just vanish into the night. To them, it would mean dishonor. Insult to the moon goddess." She spat the last words like poison. "They'll send hunters. And not just anyone, the best." A tremor ran through Rain's spine. Hunters. She had seen them before, the warriors of the pack, half men, half wolves, trained from birth to track and kill. If they came, no forest would be thick enough, no river wide enough. She glanced at Odett, her small hand curled tightly in hers. "Then we have to keep moving." Jessica finally turned, her eyes burning with the same fire Rain had always relied on. "We will. But we need more than running. We need a plan." By dawn, their legs were heavy with exhaustion. The forest had begun to thin, giving way to low hills and streams that cut jagged paths through the land. When they stumbled into a shallow hollow beneath an outcropping of rock, Jessica stopped. "Here," she said. "We rest. Just for a little." Rain sank to the ground gratefully, pulling Odett into her lap. The child was nearly asleep on her feet, her head drooping against Rain's shoulder. Jessica crouched nearby, restless even in stillness. Her eyes flicked toward the trees. "We can't keep going blind. We need food, water, shelter. And we need to figure out where we're headed." Rain bit her lip. "Anywhere but back." "That's not a plan, Rain." Jessica's voice was sharp, but underneath it was the same desperation Rain felt. We can't just wander until we starve. Rain looked down at Odett's fragile face, then back at Jessica. You're right. But where can we go? The pack owns everything around here. Jessica's silence was heavy. Finally, she said, there's the human lands. Rain blinked. Humans. They're south of the river. Past the border stones. The wolves say it's dangerous there, but maybe dangerous is better than dead. Rain had heard the stories, too. Humans who hated wolves, wars fought in the old days, treaties carved in blood. But if the wolves wanted her dead, then maybe the humans, out of ignorance or indifference, might let her live. Still, fear gnawed at her. Crossing into human land would mean leaving behind every shred of familiarity she had ever known. But then she remembered the elders' voices in Jessica's retelling, cold and merciless. Sacrifice. Offering. Death. Her choice wasn't really a choice at all. We go south, she said firmly. To the humans. Jessica nodded once, decisive. Then that's where we go. They rested only long enough for Odett to close her eyes for a brief hour, then moved again. The sun rose, pale and thin, spilling across the trees. Rain's body ached with every step, but she forced herself forward. It was near midday when the first sign of pursuit came. Jessica froze suddenly, raising a hand for silence. Rain halted, clutching Odett close, straining her ears. At first she heard nothing but the rustle of leaves and the trickle of water nearby. Then, faint and distant, a sound carried through the forest. A howl. Long, low, and unmistakable. Rain's blood turned to ice. They've found the trail, Jessica whispered. How far? Jessica's eyes narrowed. Close enough. We have to move faster. They ran. Branches clawed at their cloaks, roots snatched at their feet. Odett whimpered but clung tight, her small body bouncing against Rain's chest. The forest seemed to close around them, every shadow hiding teeth. The howls came again, closer this time, splitting the silence with bone-deep dread. They were being hunted. Jessica pushed them harder, leading them toward a narrow gorge where the river cut through the land. If we can cross, it'll throw them off for a while, she shouted over the roar of water. The gorge yawned before them, the river raging below. A narrow log bridge spanned it, slick with moss and dangerously thin. Jessica went first, arms out, moving swiftly. She reached the other side and turned, waving them on. Rain swallowed hard. She could barely feel her legs, but there was no choice. She stepped onto the log, clutching Odett tight, inching forward. The river roared beneath, threatening to swallow them whole. Halfway across, a new sound split the air, a snarl, sharp and close. Rain's head snapped up. From the trees above, a shape dropped. A hunter. He landed on the near side of the log, crouched low, his eyes gleaming gold in the shadows. His mouth twisted into a feral grin. Found you. Rain's heart slammed in her chest. She moved faster, nearly slipping as the log wobbled beneath them. Jessica shouted from the far side, Run, Rain. Don't look back. But she couldn't help it. She looked back. The hunter stepped onto the log, his balance perfect, his movements like a predator closing in on prey. His wolf soul burned bright around him, a shimmering aura of power. Compared to him, Rain felt like nothing, soulless, empty, weak. Her foot slipped. She gasped, clutching Odett tighter, barely regaining balance. The hunter laughed softly. You'll make a fine offering after all. Something inside Rain snapped. The years of whispers, the cruelty, the sentence of death that had driven her to flee, it all boiled together into one sharp edge of fury. No, she hissed. I won't. She lunged forward, heart hammering, every muscle screaming. Step after step, the log quaked beneath her, but she didn't stop. Odett clung to her neck, silent tears streaking her face. Jessica reached out, arms outstretched. Jump! Rain leapt, the world tilting, air rushing around her. She hit the far side hard, pain jolting through her knees. Jessica grabbed her, pulling her and Odett to safety. The log wobbled violently, and for a heartbeat Rain thought the hunter would follow. But the river surged, tearing at the bridge, and with a thunderous crack, the log gave way. The hunter roared as the water swallowed him, dragging him into the depths. His golden eyes vanished beneath the foam. Rain collapsed against the ground, trembling, her chest heaving. Jessica knelt beside her, gripping her arm. Are you hurt? Rain shook her head, though her whole body shook. I don't know. Jessica squeezed her hand, her own breath ragged. You did it. You made it. Rain clutched Odett close, burying her face in the child's hair. She had never been more terrified in her life. But beneath the terror, a spark glowed. She had faced a hunter and lived. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, being different didn't mean being powerless. Episode 3, The Blood Moon's Omen. The forest seemed endless, each tree a dark sentinel rising against the sky. Rain's legs ached with every step, but she forced herself onward, clinging to the belief that if they just kept moving, safety would come. The river roared far behind them now, but she knew it was no guarantee. Hunters didn't give up, not when honor was at stake, not when the pack's elders demanded her return for sacrifice. Odett slept in her arms, her small breath soft against Rain's collarbone. Jessica walked a few paces ahead, her stride still fierce despite the exhaustion dragging at her. She had taken the lead since they'd crossed the gorge, as if the responsibility of keeping them alive rested squarely on her shoulders. Rain didn't protest. She was grateful. She didn't yet trust her trembling limbs to carry more than the girl she cradled. The night deepened, the moon climbing higher, silver spilling over the canopy. For the first time, Rain noticed the way the light touched her. It wasn't warmth or comfort, it was something sharper, like a current passing over her skin. Every time she looked up, the glow seemed to grow brighter around her, though Jessica and Odett moved untouched in the same light. Rain shook the thought away. She couldn't afford distractions. Jessica, she whispered, her voice carrying in the stillness. Do you think the river stopped them? Jessica didn't slow, but her jaw tightened. Maybe one. Maybe for a time. But the pack has more than one hunter. They'll regroup. They'll keep searching. Rain's stomach clenched. She thought of the golden eyes that had locked on hers before the river swallowed him. That memory alone made her skin crawl. Then we can't stop. We won't, Jessica promised. But we have to think smarter. They know this land better than we do. They can track scent, read the signs of every broken twig. If we just keep walking straight, they'll catch us. Rain lowered her gaze to Odett, still asleep despite the harsh jostle of their pace. Her voice softened. She can't go much longer without rest. Jessica slowed then, finally stopping beneath a thick cluster of pines. She turned to Rain, her expression unreadable. We'll rest for an hour. No fire. No noise. Just enough for you both to breathe. Rain wanted to argue. Every second of stillness felt like a step closer to capture, but she knew Jessica was right. Her arms were trembling from carrying Odett, her back screaming with pain. Even her determination had limits. They settled in the hollow of the trees, Odett curling up between them. Jessica kept her knife unsheathed, her gaze never straying far from the shadows. Rain lay on her side, exhaustion dragging her down. But just as her eyes began to close, she caught it again, the strange pulse under her skin, like the beat of a drum. It was faint, but insistent. As if something deep within her had woken and was stretching for the first time. She pressed a hand against her chest, heart hammering. What was this? Was it fear, or something else? She thought of the hunters, their glowing eyes and burning auras, the wolf souls that marked them as strong, chosen. She had always been the opposite, soulless, cursed. And yet... Her skin tingled beneath the moonlight. Rain shivered and pulled Odett closer, willing the feeling away. But even as sleep claimed her, the strange pulse followed her into her dreams. The dream was different from any she had known. She stood in a wide meadow under a crimson sky, the moon swollen and red above her. Wind whipped around her, carrying voices she couldn't understand, low, murmuring, almost like chanting. In the distance, a shadow moved. Tall, vast, and shifting. Its form was neither wolf nor human, but something in between, cloaked in smoke and flame. Its eyes glowed, not gold like the hunters, but silver bright, piercing straight through her. "Why are you here?" Rain whispered, though the words seemed to vanish in the storm. The figure's mouth opened, but the voice she heard wasn't one, it was many, layered, ancient. "Not why. When. The blood moon comes, and with it, your choice. Flee, and be prey. Stand, and awaken." Rain staggered back, heart thundering. "I don't understand." The shadow raised its hand, pointing straight at her. The ground split beneath her feet, flames erupting, swallowing the meadow whole. "You will." Rain jolted awake, breath sharp in her throat. Sweat clung to her skin despite the cold. The moon still glowed above, pale silver instead of blood red. Jessica sat nearby, knife in hand, eyes sharp. "You were dreaming," Jessica said, though her gaze didn't soften. Rain swallowed, glancing down at Odett, still asleep. "It didn't feel like a dream." Jessica tilted her head. "What then?" Rain hesitated, the words heavy on her tongue. To admit she had seen visions under the moonlight would sound like madness. And yet something deep in her gut told her it wasn't madness at all. Before she could answer, a sound cut through the air. A branch snapped. Jessica's head whipped toward the sound, muscles tense. She raised a hand sharply, signaling silence. Rain froze, clutching Odett tight. From the darkness, the rustle of movement came, soft, deliberate, circling. Jessica rose silently, knife gleaming in the moonlight. Her voice was a whisper, sharp as a blade. "They've found us." They ran again, hearts pounding, the forest a blur around them. Behind them came the unmistakable sound of pursuit, footfalls too heavy for deer, too coordinated for wild animals. Rain didn't dare look back. She held Odett tight, the child's small whimpers muffled against her shoulder. Jessica stayed close, cutting a path through the undergrowth. The hunters were faster. Stronger. Closing in. Rain's lungs burned, her legs screaming for rest. Just when she thought she would collapse, Jessica grabbed her arm and yanked her behind a thicket of rocks. "Down," she hissed. They crouched low, hearts hammering. Through the leaves, Rain saw them, 3 figures moving swiftly between the trees, their golden eyes glowing in the dark. Their movements were inhumanly precise, their bodies flowing with the strength of the wolf within. Rain bit her lip, fighting the tremor in her limbs. Soulless. Powerless. That was what they had always called her. How could she, how could anyone, stand against that? The hunters paused, sniffing the air. One of them turned, his gaze sweeping dangerously close to their hiding spot. Rain's breath hitched. Then, as if on instinct, she pressed her palm to the earth. She didn't know why, only that the strange pulse in her veins flared, desperate for release. The ground beneath her hand shivered. Not loudly, not enough for the hunters to notice, but she felt it. A tremor, faint but real, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Her eyes widened. What had she just done? Jessica gripped her wrist, whispering fiercely. "Don't move." The hunters lingered a moment longer, then continued south, their golden eyes fading into the distance. Rain's breath escaped in a rush. But the tremor still hummed in her blood, alive, waiting. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if maybe she wasn't soulless after all. Episode 4, Shadows at the Border. The forest grew quieter as dawn neared, the night sounds fading into the hush of waking birds. Mist hung low among the trees, curling around trunks like pale fingers. Every step felt heavier, yet Rain pressed on, Odett's hand clasped in hers while Jessica moved just ahead, knife flashing whenever a branch needed cutting. The hours of running had hollowed them out, leaving their bodies aching and eyes raw with exhaustion. Yet the fear of capture was sharper than fatigue, driving them forward. Rain had hardly spoken since the close brush with the hunters. Her mind replayed the moment when she had touched the earth and felt it tremble. She could still recall the pulse, the shiver that had moved through her veins. It had not been fear. It had been power. But how could that be? She had no wolf soul. The orphanage matron had said it, the elders had repeated it, and the hunters had proven it by hunting her. Soulless. Cursed. Useless. And yet the ground had answered her. She glanced down at Odett. The girl's face was pale, her lips pressed tight as she focused on keeping pace. Rain wanted to scoop her up again, carry her as before, but her own arms still ached. They had to conserve every ounce of strength. Jessica suddenly raised a hand, signaling stillness. Rain froze, heart hammering. Ahead, through the mist, the trees thinned. Beyond them stretched a barren clearing, and far in the distance, dark shapes loomed against the horizon, walls. Rain's chest tightened. "The border," she whispered. Jessica nodded slowly, her gaze sharp and wary. "The edge of human lands. If we cross, the hunters will hesitate to follow. At least openly." The thought should have brought relief. Instead, dread pooled in Rain's stomach. Human lands were no promise of safety. To humans, werewolves were monsters. To hunters, humans were enemies. Rain, Jessica, and Odett were neither and both, belonging nowhere. Jessica crouched low, scanning the clearing. Too open. If we run for it now, they'll spot us. We wait until nightfall. Rain's pulse quickened. Wait? Out here. We don't know how close they are. Jessica's eyes hardened. And if we're seen in daylight, we won't make it 20 steps. At night, the mist will hide us. Rain bit her lip, fear warring with sense. Jessica was right, but the thought of waiting while hunters prowled nearby made her skin crawl. Odett tugged lightly on Rain's sleeve. "We'll be safe when the moon rises," she said softly, her eyes oddly steady for a child's. "It always protects you." Rain blinked down at her. The word sent a chill across her skin. "What do you mean?" But Odett only pressed her lips together and looked away. They sheltered in the tree-line, cloaked by shadows. Jessica remained vigilant, her knife never leaving her hand. Rain tried to rest, but every sound made her jolt. A crow's cry. A distant snap of branches. The faint whisper of wind through the grass. Her thoughts returned again and again to the dream, the crimson sky, the figure cloaked in smoke, the voice that had spoken of choice. Flee and be prey. Stand and awaken. Awaken to what? She had no wolf soul. She was nothing. And yet the ground had trembled at her touch. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples, Jessica stirred. It's time. They rose silently, Odett between them, and began their careful crawl through the clearing. Mist crept in as night deepened, veiling their figures. The walls ahead loomed larger, dark stone rising like a fortress. Hope flickered, fragile, dangerous. But then a howl split the silence. Rain froze, blood turning to ice. It was not the call of a wild wolf. It was sharper, crueler, and it carried across the clearing like a blade. The sound of hunters. Jessica cursed under her breath. They're close. Run. They broke into a sprint, feet pounding against the earth. Odett's hand slipped from Rain's, and Rain scooped her up without thinking, heart thundering. The walls loomed closer, closer, but so did the golden gleam of eyes behind them. Shapes burst from the mist, 3 hunters, their forms swift and terrible. Their eyes glowed like burning coals, their movements fluid with inhuman grace. Rain's chest constricted. Too fast. They'd never make it. Jessica spun, knife flashing. Go. I'll hold them. No. Rain's cry tore from her throat. The thought of leaving Jessica to be torn apart sliced through her. We can't. But Jessica was already moving, slashing at the first hunter with desperate fury. Her blade caught flesh, but the hunter barely faltered, striking back with claws that glinted in the moonlight. Rain's legs moved before thought, carrying her and Odett forward. The walls loomed, guards pacing above, their torches flaring. Shouts rose as the humans spotted them. Behind, Rain heard the clash of steel, Jessica's snarl of effort, the hunter's growls. Rain! Jessica's voice cut through the chaos. Run! Rain's heart shattered. But Odett's small arms clung tight around her neck, and instinct drove her on. The ground shook, no, not from her steps. It was deeper, louder, as though the earth itself roared beneath them. Rain stumbled, eyes wide. The same pulse that had haunted her surged again, fiercer than before, spilling fire through her veins. The earth split. A jagged crack tore open behind her, swallowing roots and stone. The hunters reeled back, their pursuit breaking for the first time. Jessica staggered, barely keeping her footing. Rain froze, staring at her trembling hands. She hadn't meant to, she hadn't even thought. Odett whispered in her ear, voice calm and eerie in the chaos. The moon heard you. The words sank like stones into Rain's chest. The humans shouted louder, weapons raised from the wall. Some pointed toward her, eyes wide in terror at the unnatural quake. To them, she was no girl, she was something monstrous, something to be feared. Caught between hunters and humans, Rain stood trembling, the crack yawning like a wound in the earth behind her. Jessica limped toward her, blood streaking her arm, eyes blazing with shock. Rain, she gasped, what did you just do? Rain couldn't answer. Her body shook too violently, the pulse still burning through her veins. And above them all, the moon glowed, brighter than she had ever seen, silver light spilling over the battlefield. Episode 5, New Orleans, City of Shadows. The journey south bled into days. The land changed as they moved farther from the borderlands, forests thinning into wetlands, rivers winding like silver veins across the landscape. The air grew thicker, damp, filled with the tang of salt and decay. Strange birds shrieked in the marshes, their wings flashing white in the sinking light. For Rain, the world felt both heavier and more alive. Since the night of the quake, her skin prickled constantly, as though some hidden thread tethered her to the earth. Sometimes, when she dreamed, she could hear whispers beneath the soil, a murmur of roots and water, an endless pulse that matched her own heartbeat. She told no one. Not even Jessica. Jessica walked with a limp now, her arms still bound from the wound she had taken at the border. She hid the pain, but Rain noticed the strain in her steps, the way her jaw clenched each time she shifted her weight. Odett clung to her side more often than to Rain's, small fingers brushing Jessica's hand as if to steady her. One evening, as the horizon burned crimson, they reached a ridge. Beyond it, the world opened into a vast sprawl of lights, flickering like constellations brought to Earth. The city shimmered against the delta waters, smoke and music drifting upward into the twilight. Rain stopped, breath catching. "Is that?" Jessica nodded, her eyes narrowing with both awe and caution. "New Orleans." Rain's chest tightened. The city was beautiful, wild, and strange, unlike anything she had imagined. But it was also dangerous. Here, wolves whispered, witches plotted, and humans danced unaware above an underworld that could devour them whole. Odett tugged Rain's sleeve. "It looks like stars fell down," she whispered, her wide eyes reflecting the glow. Rain forced a smile. "Maybe it's where stars come to rest." But even as she said it, she felt the weight of the prophecy pressing on her chest. Stars, yes, but shadows, too. The closer they drew, the louder the city became. Carriages and cars rattled on cobbled streets. Jazz and drums spilled from taverns, mingling with shouts of vendors and laughter of drunken sailors. Lanterns burned in every color, casting alleys in crimson and gold. Perfume clashed with smoke, salt with sugar, incense with blood. Rain tried to drink it all in, her senses overwhelmed. She had grown up in silence, in the hush of forests and the stone-gray orphanage walls. Here, life surged with a fever that made her both dizzy and alive. Yet under it all lurked something darker. Eyes followed them from alleys. Figures lingered in shadows longer than they should have. Every corner seemed to hide a secret, every smile a threat. Jessica stayed tense, hand never leaving her knife. "Keep close," she warned. "This place isn't for wandering." They needed a witch. That was why they had come. Somewhere in this tangle of streets lived a woman spoken of in whispers, a mentor who could help Rain awaken the truth inside her. A witch who had survived longer than any hunter, who defied both wolf and man. But where to begin? Jessica had stolen a scrap of a map days earlier from a river port. Scrawled across one corner in faded ink was a name, Madame Isolde. A witch, rumored to take in strays. Some said she was a healer, others that she was a dealer in souls. No one agreed on the truth. Still, it was the only name they had. The first night in the city nearly destroyed them. They found lodging in a crumbling boarding house near the river, run by a woman with too many rings and a smile too sharp. The room smelled of mildew and wine, but the door locked, and that was enough. Rain and Jessica collapsed into restless sleep, Odett curled between them. But sometime near dawn, Rain woke. The city's noise had softened, yet something was wrong. A shadow pressed against the window, faint but certain. She sat up, heart pounding. The glass shattered inward. A figure lunged, eyes gleaming with golden hunger. A hunter. Rain screamed, rolling as claws sliced through the bed. Jessica woke instantly, knife flashing. Odett shrieked, scrambling into a corner. The room exploded into chaos. Wood splintered, cloth tore, blood sprayed. Rain tried to grab Odett, but another shadow appeared at the door, 2 hunters. 3. Jessica fought like fury, but she was still weakened. One blow sent her crashing into the wall. Rain's terror surged, the same fire that had burned at the border flaring in her veins. Without thinking, she thrust her hands toward the floor. The boards cracked, snapping upward like jagged teeth. The hunter stumbled, snarling. One lunged anyway, claws raised, only to be hurled backward by a blast of unseen force that left Rain trembling and breathless. She stared at her hands, chest heaving. That hadn't been the ground. It had been her. The hunters snarled again, but suddenly the air shifted. A voice rang out, sharp as a whip. Enough. Every figure froze. At the doorway stood a woman draped in silks darker than midnight. Her hair was silver, her eyes black as obsidian. The hunters lowered their heads, backing away, though their growls lingered. The woman's gaze slid to Rain. Something unreadable flickered there, recognition, perhaps, or curiosity. "You are noisy guests," she said coolly. "But fortunate ones. The city would have devoured you by morning." Jessica staggered to her feet, knife still raised. "Who the hell are you?" The woman smiled, though it held no warmth. "I am the one you seek, child of no tribe. Madame Isolde. And you have just proven yourself worthy to enter my house." They followed her through twisting streets into the heart of the French Quarter. Music throbbed all around, but within Isolde's walls, silence reigned. The house was a cathedral of shadows. Candles burned in every alcove, their flames bending strangely, as though leaning toward her. Symbols covered the walls, circles, moons, runes Rain could not read. The air pulsed with something alive. Rain felt it instantly. The same current that whispered to her in dreams thrummed here, thick and strong. Isolde led them to a chamber draped in velvet, then turned, her gaze settling on Rain. "You have power," she said simply. "Wild. Untamed. Dangerous." Rain swallowed. "I don't understand. I don't even have a wolf's soul." Isolde's smile curved like a blade. "No. You are not wolf. You are more. That is why they fear you." Jessica stepped protectively in front of Rain. "If you know what she is, tell us. Don't play games." Isolde's gaze lingered, sharp with amusement. "What she is unfinished. A vessel. A fracture in fate. The moon herself marked this one. And mark my words, such a mark always demands a price." Her eyes returned to Rain, gleaming. "Do you wish to know the truth of yourself, child?" Rain's heart pounded. She wanted to scream yes, to demand it. But some instinct whispered caution. Truth was never given freely. Odett moved closer to Isolde, staring up at her with unblinking eyes. "You already know who she is," the child said softly. Silence fell, heavy as stone. Isolde tilted her head, studying Odett. "Interesting," she murmured. "The little one sees more than most. Perhaps more than even she understands." Rain's skin prickled. What did Odett know? Before she could speak, Isolde raised a hand. "Rest now. You are hunted, wounded, and raw. If you wish for answers, you will have them, but only when you are ready to bear them." Her voice lowered, carrying a weight that pressed against Rain's chest. "And beware. In this city, shadows listen. Every step forward will draw eyes you do not wish to meet." That night, in Isolde's house, Rain dreamed again. The crimson sky. The cloaked figure. The voice that burned like fire. The queen rises, or the world falls. When she woke, the candle beside her bed had burned out, though no wax remained. Only a pool of silver ash. And outside, beyond the walls, New Orleans stirred, a city of shadows, waiting to claim her. Episode 6, The Witch Mentor. Rain did not sleep well in Madame Isolde's house. The walls hummed faintly, as though alive. Candles guttered without wind, and shadows stretched longer than they should. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, whispers slid across her skin like cold fingers. She dreamed of blood rivers and silver moons, of wolves bowing before faceless queens. When she woke, Her sheets were damp with sweat, her heart beat a frantic drum. Jessica noticed. Of course she did. But when Rain tried to speak of it, Jessica only shook her head. Dreams are dreams. Don't give them power. Rain wanted to believe that. But in this house, every dream felt like a warning. Madame Isolde wasted little time. By the second morning, she summoned Rain to a chamber unlike any Rain had ever seen. It was circular, carved deep into the house's bones. The floor was black stone, etched with spiraling sigils that seemed to shift when looked at too long. Glass jars lined the walls, filled with things Rain could not name, feathers, bones, liquids glowing faintly green. At the center burned a brazier, its smoke curling upward in serpents. Isolde stood waiting, draped in flowing robes that shimmered like oil on water. Her eyes glinted as Rain stepped into the circle. You carry power untaught, she said. Like a blade wielded by a child. You could cut others, or yourself, without knowing which. Rain swallowed, nerves twisting. You want to teach me to control it? Isolde smiled faintly. Control is a lie. I will teach you to channel. To bend chaos without breaking beneath it. Rain hesitated. She glanced back at the door, where Jessica lingered in the shadows, arms crossed, distrust written across every line of her body. Odett perched beside her, wide-eyed, as if waiting for something only she could see. Step forward, Isolde commanded. The stone was cold under Rain's bare feet as she crossed into the circle. A tremor ran through her body, as though the air itself shifted once she entered. Isolde lifted a hand, and the smoke of the brazier thickened, swirling. Close your eyes. Rain obeyed. Now, listen. At first there was only her own ragged breath. Then, beneath it, faintly, footsteps, heartbeats, the rustle of wings outside the house. Deeper still, she heard the creak of roots in soil, the rush of the river beyond the streets, the slow churn of the earth itself. Her chest tightened. It was too much, a flood pressing into her head. Good, Isolde murmured. Do not turn away. Let it drown you, and then choose what to surface with. Rain gasped, struggling. Her pulse raced. Her knees nearly buckled. And then, just when she thought she would shatter, she seized upon one thread, the river's flow. Cool, steady, endless. She clung to it like a rope, pulling herself back. Her eyes flew open. She staggered, breath tearing out of her. Isolde's smile widened, approving but sharp. You touched the current. Not many can. But remember, water can carry or it can drown. Which will it be for you? Rain's hands trembled. She didn't answer. Jessica's voice cut the silence, low and hard. Enough for one day. But Isolde only chuckled. Oh no. This was the beginning. Power always hungers. And hers is starving. Training became relentless. Every day, Isolde pressed Rain harder, chanting strange syllables that made the air vibrate, tracing symbols with ash on Rain's skin, forcing her to confront illusions that blurred into reality. Sometimes Rain felt stronger, sharper, as if her body were waking after a lifetime of sleep. Other times she collapsed, sick and shaking, her nose bleeding, her vision blurred. Jessica hated it. She argued constantly with Isolde, accusing her of pushing Rain too far. She's just a girl, Jessica snapped one night, pacing their cramped chamber. You're tearing her apart. She is not just a girl, Isolde replied, voice smooth as silk. She is marked. Do you think destiny waits patiently? It devours the unready. Rain sat on the edge of the bed, silent, torn between them. She wanted Jessica's protection, but she also wanted answers, needed them. Every lesson with Isolde unlocked another piece of herself she hadn't known existed. And yet, with each step, she felt the weight of the prophecy tightening, change she could not see but could already feel. One evening, Odett disappeared. Panic ripped through Rain when they found her gone. The house was vast, filled with twisting halls and hidden doors, but Odett had always stayed close. They searched frantically until finally Rain heard faint humming. She followed it down a narrow stair into a cellar lined with jars and bones. There, Odett sat calmly before a mirror framed in silver, humming a tune Rain didn't recognize. The mirror's surface rippled like water. And in it, shadows moved, tall, cloaked figures with eyes of burning gold. Rain's blood froze. Odett! She rushed forward, grabbing the child's shoulders. The mirror stilled instantly, only her own reflection staring back. Odett blinked up at her. They wanted to see you. Rain's heart pounded. Who? The ones who wait. Cold swept Rain's spine. Jessica appeared in the doorway, knife drawn. When she saw the mirror, her face hardened. We're leaving this house. But Isolde appeared behind her, voice sharp. You are not. The girls saw what she was meant to see. Jessica whirled on her, fury blazing. You're using her, using both of them. Isolde did not flinch. Every gift carries cost. You of all people should know that. Rain clutched Odett, torn between terror and fascination. The mirror had shown something real. And somehow, Odett had touched it. What was she? That night, Isolde finally revealed more. She brought Rain alone into the chamber, the brazier burning with blue fire. You ask what you are, she said softly. Listen, then. Rain's pulse thundered. There are wolves, Isolde said. Bound to the moon, tied to flesh. There are witches, born of earth, bound to bone. But you are both and neither. A fracture. A bridge. The moon touched you not as wolf, not as witch, but as vessel. Rain shook her head. That doesn't make sense. I'm not. You are what the prophecy whispers of. The orphan queen. A soul unclaimed by pack or coven, who can wield what both fear. That is why hunters chase you. Why shadows watch you. Because your rise means their fall. The words pressed against Rain like chains. And if I don't rise? Isolde's eyes gleamed. Then the world drowns. Rain's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but deep down she knew, the fire in her veins, the dreams, the whispers, they all pointed here. But she was no queen. She was just a girl who had lost everything. Isolde stepped closer, her voice a whisper like silk and steel. Destiny does not ask if you are ready, child. It comes whether you welcome it or not. The days bled together after that, each one heavier. Rain's power grew, yes, but so did the shadows around her. Whispers followed her in the streets when Isolde sent her on errands. Eyes gleamed from alleys. Once, she caught the scent of blood trailing her back to the house. New Orleans pulsed like a living beast, its heartbeat quickening each night. And Rain felt herself drawn deeper into its veins, unable to tell if she was walking toward her fate, or straight into its jaws. Episode 7, The Prophecy Revealed. The storm broke over New Orleans on the night everything changed. Rain sat by the upstairs window of Madame Isolde's house, watching the sky split open. Lightning clawed across the clouds, thunder rolled like a warning drum, and the streets below glistened slick and empty. The storm made the city feel alive, a restless giant turning in its sleep. She couldn't rest. Her veins still hummed from that day's lessons. Isolde had forced her to channel raw fire until her palms blistered, then heal the wounds with water drawn from the air itself. Rain's body shook from exhaustion, but her mind spun faster than ever. She pressed her forehead to the glass, trying to quiet herself. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside her chest. Behind her, Odett stirred in her cot, murmuring in sleep. Jessica sat in the far corner, oiling her knife, her jaw tight. She hadn't spoken to Rain much since the mirror incident. When the knock came, it was soft, but in the silence of the storm it cracked like a gunshot. Jessica was on her feet instantly, blade ready. Rain froze. The knock came again, slower this time. Before Jessica could move, the door swung open. Madame Isolde stood there, candle in hand, her shadow stretching long across the room. Her face was grave, sharper than Rain had ever seen it. "It is time," Isolde said simply. Jessica bristled. "Time for what?" "The truth," Isolde answered. Her gaze locked on Rain. "And the choice." The ritual chamber was darker than usual, lit only by the brazier's glow. The smoke smelled of sage and iron, thick enough to sting Rain's eyes. Strange symbols had been drawn fresh across the floor, glowing faintly as if alive. Isolde gestured for Rain to stand in the center. Jessica blocked her path. "Not until you tell me what this is." Isolde's patience thinned, though her voice remained calm. "You know fragments, guardian. She must know the whole. Stand aside." Jessica's eyes burned. "You think I'll just let you?" "Jess." Rain's voice cracked, surprising even herself. Both women turned to her. "I need to know. Whatever it is. I need to know." Jessica's chest rose and fell, torn between fury and fear. At last she lowered the knife, but she did not move far. Her hand never left the hilt. Rain stepped into the circle. The air shifted instantly, a pulse like a heartbeat beneath her feet. Isolde began to chant. Words older than any language Rain recognized spilled from her lips, weaving around the room. The brazier's flames surged, the smoke coiling upward to form shapes, wolves, moons, crowns of bone. The circle flared with light. And then Rain saw it. The vision slammed into her like a wave. A vast battlefield under a blood-red moon. Wolves torn apart by shadowed figures, witches burning with their own fire. And at the center, a throne of stone, empty, waiting. The ground split beneath it, rivers of silver light spilling out. A voice rose, echoing through the vision, neither male nor female, but something vast. "When the orphan rises, queen without crown, flesh of wolf, soul of witch, the world shall bow or burn. Her choice will break the chains, or forge them anew." Rain's knees buckled. The images seared into her mind, the throne, the chains, the rivers of light. She tried to turn away, but the vision gripped her harder. She saw herself standing before that throne. Power blazing from her hands, her eyes glowing white. Wolves howled in terror and devotion alike. Covens bowed, some weeping, some cursing. And beyond them all, a shadow waited, vast and patient. Her scream tore from her throat before she realized it. The vision shattered. Rain collapsed to the stone, gasping, her body slick with sweat. Jessica was at her side instantly, pulling her close. "What did you do to her?" she snarled at Isolde. But Rain barely heard her. The prophecy still echoed in her skull, louder than any storm. Isolde's face softened, almost sorrowful. "I did nothing. I only showed her what already binds her soul." Rain shook, clutching at Jessica's arms. "I don't want it," she whispered. "I don't want any of it." Isolde's voice was gentle, but firm. "Want has nothing to do with destiny. The moon has chosen. You are its vessel." The days that followed blurred into dread. Rain avoided the ritual chamber, but the vision lingered no matter where she went. Every glance in the mirror showed flickers of that other self, eyes glowing, power spilling from her skin. Every time she tried to sleep, the throne loomed in her dreams. Jessica tried to anchor her. She brought Rain food, sat with her in silence, brushed her hair when her hands shook too badly. But even Jessica couldn't erase the fear. Odett grew stranger still. She stared at Rain often, as if measuring her against something only she could see. Sometimes she whispered to herself, sometimes to the air, words Rain could never quite catch. Once, Rain woke to find Odett standing at the window, murmuring, "The chains break soon." When Rain asked what she meant, Odett only smiled, eerie and calm. And always, in the corners of her sight, Rain felt watched. Not by Isolde, not by Jessica, but by something else, something waiting. One evening, Isolde summoned Rain alone. Jessica protested furiously, but Isolde insisted. The guardian cannot walk her path for her. This she must face herself. Reluctantly, Jessica let Rain go, though her glare promised blood if anything happened. Isolde led Rain to the back garden, where the storm had torn branches from the trees. The air smelled of wet earth and iron. At the garden center stood a stone well, ancient, moss-covered. "This is older than the city," Isolde said softly. "Older than the covens, older than the packs. It remembers." Rain's skin prickled. "Remembers what?" "The first prophecy." Isolde pressed a small knife into Rain's hand. "Cut your palm. Let the well taste your blood." Rain recoiled. "Why?" "Because truth does not speak for free." Rain hesitated, the blade trembling in her grip. But something inside her, some hollow place aching for answers, pushed her forward. She pressed the blade to her skin. Blood welled, hot and bright, and dripped into the well. The air shifted instantly. The ground hummed. Rain staggered back as mist rose from the stones, curling upward to form shapes, this time not wolves or witches, but chains, endless chains, snapping one by one. A voice rose from the well, the same voice as in the vision, vast and terrible. "Daughter of none, heir of all. You are the hand that will unmake or bind the world. The throne waits. The chains tremble. Choose." Rain fell to her knees, clutching her bleeding hand. The voice echoed inside her skull, shaking her bones. Isolde watched silently, eyes glinting with something Rain couldn't name. When the vision faded, Rain gasped, broken. "Why me?" she whispered. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want it." Isolde knelt before her, cupping her face with cold hands. "Because fate does not care what you want. It cares what you are." Tears stung Rain's eyes. She shoved away from Isolde, stumbling to her feet. "Then I'll refuse. I'll walk away." Isolde's voice followed her, soft and merciless. "Refusal is also a choice. But the world will bleed for it." Rain didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window until dawn, trembling, Jessica asleep beside her, Odett curled like a shadow at their feet. She stared at the moon sinking beyond the city, and the words burned in her skull. The orphan queen. The chains. The throne. No matter how far she ran, she realized now, she would never escape it. The only question was whether she would bow to the prophecy, or break it. Episode 8, Chains of Betrayal. The air in New Orleans had shifted. It wasn't just the storm anymore. The city seemed to hold its breath, as if the streets, the stones, even the shadows knew something was breaking. Rain felt it in her chest each time she walked past strangers in the quarter, the way their eyes lingered too long, as if they recognized her without knowing why. Whispers followed her, curling behind her ears. She told herself it was paranoia. But paranoia had teeth, and they were sinking in deeper every day. Jessica noticed first. She'd been pacing the windows, muttering under her breath, hands twitching near her blade. She'd seen wolves watching from the rooftops, caught scents she didn't like on the wind. She didn't trust Isolde's silences, or Odett's wandering stares. "Something's coming," Jessica whispered one night, while Rain lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling. "They're circling. I can feel it." Rain didn't answer. Because the truth was, she felt it too. Isolde tried to keep her focused on training. Fire, water, the binding of runes. Hours spent channeling until her body ached, until she couldn't tell if her trembling was from exhaustion or fear. "Discipline keeps chaos at bay," Isolde told her again and again. "And chaos is what your enemies want." But Rain couldn't focus. Not when she woke each night to dreams of chains snapping across the sky. Not when Odett's eyes seemed to follow her even when she wasn't looking. One evening, while Rain traced protective sigils in chalk, Odett crouched nearby, humming to herself. She wasn't supposed to be in the chamber, but Isolde never stopped her. "You don't need those," Odett said softly. Rain froze. "What?" "The circles. The runes. You already carry them." Odett tilted her head, her smile too wide. "In your blood. In your bones." A shiver ran through Rain. "How do you know that?" Odett just laughed, rocking back on her heels. "Because I hear them." Isolde silenced her with a look, but the damage was done. The words stuck in Rain's ribs like splinters. The first betrayal came not with fire or steel, but with silence. Jessica confronted Isolde after another long night. Rain had drifted into the hall and overheard them. She wasn't meant to, but the words carried sharp and clear. "You're killing her," Jessica snapped. "She's a child, not your vessel." "She is not a child," Isolde answered coolly. "She is prophecy." "She's Rain," Jessica growled. "And if you think I'll stand by while you grind her down." "You will stand by," Isolde interrupted, "because without me, she dies. And without her, all of us die." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Rain pressed her fist to her mouth, swallowing the cry that threatened to spill. She didn't want to hear more, but she couldn't move. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was low and dangerous. "If you cross a line, I swear to God, Isolde, I'll cut you down myself." Rain stumbled back into her room before they found her listening, her chest tight, her stomach hollow. She wanted to believe Jessica, to trust her, but the echo of Isolde's words lingered. "She is prophecy." Was that all she was? The second betrayal came with blood. A pack of wolves tracked them in the French market 2 nights later. Rain hadn't wanted to go, but Isolde insisted she learn to walk among mortals without drawing attention. Jessica flanked her, hand never far from her knife. They smelled them first, iron and musk, sharp through the scent of spices and rain. 5 men in ragged coats, eyes too bright, teeth too sharp when they smiled. Rain's blood iced. Jessica stepped forward, body coiled, blade hidden in her sleeve. "Keep walking," she murmured to Rain. But the men didn't move aside. Their leader, tall and gaunt with a scar down his cheek, stepped into their path. His grin was feral. "Little Queen," he said, his voice thick with hunger. "Our master has been waiting." Jessica lunged before he could move closer. Steel flashed, a snarl tore through the night. The market erupted into chaos, stalls overturned, glass shattering. Rain stumbled back, fire sparking at her fingertips without her bidding. "Run!" Jessica shouted, parrying a claw that raked sparks from stone. But Rain didn't run. She couldn't. The wolf with the scarred face lunged for her throat. Instinct surged, flame erupted from her hands, searing the air. The wolf shrieked, his coat igniting, the stench of burning fur filling the street. The others fell back, snarling, eyes wide. Not with fear, with recognition. The scarred wolf writhed on the ground, but his voice carried, ragged and furious. The chains are breaking. She's the key. She's the... Jessica's blade silenced him, deep and final. Blood pooled black on the cobblestones. The others scattered into the night. Rain stood shaking, staring at her burning hands. She couldn't stop the fire. It danced on her skin, alive, eager. Jessica grabbed her wrists, hissing as the heat scorched her palms. Rain! Control it, look at me. Rain gasped, forcing the fire back down, until only smoke curled from her fingertips. Her breath came in sobs. She'd killed before. She'd burned before. But this was different. This time, they hadn't looked at her with hatred. They'd looked at her with worship. The third betrayal cut deepest. That night, Rain found Odett waiting in her room. The girl sat cross-legged on the floor, humming again, her eyes too wide in the candlelight. "They'll never stop," Odett whispered. "They'll all come for you. Wolves, witches, even the dead. They smell the chains breaking. They know." Rain hugged herself, trembling. "Then what do I do?" "Choose." Odett's smile stretched. "Break them, or bind them. Either way, you'll betray someone." Rain shook her head. "I don't want to betray anyone." "You already have." Odett's voice shifted, lower, older, as if another spoke through her mouth. "You betrayed the pack when you were born. You betray your guardian each time you listen to the witch. And soon," her eyes glinted. "Soon you will betray yourself." Rain stumbled back, her heart pounding. "Odett, what are you?" Odett blinked, and the strange light vanished. She tilted her head like a bird, suddenly childlike again. "I'm your friend." But Rain didn't believe her. Not anymore. By dawn, the cracks had spread too wide to ignore. Jessica didn't trust Isolde. Isolde didn't trust Jessica. Odett was something else entirely. And Rain couldn't even trust herself. The prophecy's words echoed louder with each breath. Chains breaking. A throne waiting. Choice or ruin. But now, for the first time, Rain realized something far worse. Prophecy wasn't about destiny. It was about betrayal. And the only question left was, who would betray her first? Episode 9, The Moon God's Mate. Night pressed down on New Orleans like a velvet shroud, the kind that muffled sound and made every heartbeat echo too loud. Rain lay awake in the attic room Isolde had given her, staring at the cracked rafters. Sleep had been fragile lately, broken by whispers she couldn't silence. But tonight, sleep wasn't fragile at all. Tonight it was a flood. The moment her eyes closed, she was pulled under. She stood barefoot in a field of silver grass. Above her, the moon hung huge and swollen, filling the sky with a light so bright it erased the stars. The air smelled of frost and blood. The horizon shimmered like the surface of a mirror. And then she felt him. Not with her eyes, he was too vast for that. She felt him in her bones, in the marrow of her teeth. A presence, ancient and immense, folding around her like a hand closing over prey. "Mine," a voice breathed, not with words, but with the low vibration of existence itself. Rain staggered. "Who are you?" The grass bent beneath her as though a tide rolled through it. Shadows coiled together, shaping the outline of a man. Broad shoulders, tall as a pillar, face obscured by moonlight too bright to look upon. His eyes glowed pale and endless. "I am the one you were made for." Her chest tightened. "No. I don't belong to anyone. His laughter shook the field. Not cruel, worse. Amused. Intimate. You belong to me because you were born of me. Flesh of my flame, blood of my tide. You are the queen I chose before the world even had wolves. Rain shook her head, stumbling back. That's a lie. The figure stepped forward. The earth trembled under his weight. Wherever he walked, the grass turned white, frozen solid. You feel me in your veins every time your fire rises. You wonder why your power never obeys you. Because it was never yours. It was mine. And I am only calling it home. His hand reached toward her, long fingers, shimmering like liquid silver. Her heart pounded, torn between terror and something stranger. Attraction. Pull. A heat that had nothing to do with fire and everything to do with the gravity of the moon itself. No, she whispered, but the words sounded hollow. You are not their weapon. You are not their orphan. You are mine. My mate. My queen. The silver grass whipped around her like chains. Rain screamed. And woke with Jessica shaking her, rough and urgent. Rain. You were burning up. Rain gasped, realizing her sheets were scorched, smoke rising from the mattress. Her body trembled with aftershocks of the dream, sweat slicking her skin. Jessica's eyes were wide with fear, and something else. Concern. You called out, Jessica whispered. You said, don't touch me. Who was it? Rain pressed a hand to her chest, forcing breath back into her lungs. No one. But the lie tasted bitter. For days, the dreams returned. Sometimes the moon god whispered. Sometimes he demanded. Sometimes he appeared not as a giant of silver light, but as a man her own age, sharp jaw, eyes burning with cold fire, voice like velvet over steel. Each time he came closer. Each time, Rain woke more hollow, her body aching as if she'd been pulled toward him, stretched across some cosmic tether she couldn't cut. Isolde noticed her distraction. You're paler than usual, the witch said, her tone sharp. What have you been dreaming? Nothing. Isolde's eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me, girl. The veil is thin around you. Something stirs. Jessica overheard and bristled. Don't push her. She's already being pushed, Isolde snapped back. Better she speak it than let it rot her from inside. Rain slammed her fists on the table, the force rattling jars of herbs. Stop it. Both of you. Her voice cracked. Silence fell. Neither pressed her again, but their eyes followed her, Isolde's calculating, Jessica's worried. Neither could save her from the truth that she carried the moon god inside her veins. The breaking point came on the night of the blood moon. The sky glowed red, casting the city in a haunting, otherworldly glow. Crowds gathered to gawk, but Rain knew better. She felt the air vibrating, the pulse of something vast clawing through the veil. That night, she didn't even have to sleep. The dream came for her fully awake. She blinked and found herself standing once more in the silver field. The moon god was already waiting. This time, his form was clear, terrifying in beauty. His face was chiseled, his skin luminous, his eyes pale fire. A man, yes, but more. Too much more. You can't run from what you are, he told her. His voice caressed her, curling around her ribs, sliding beneath her skin. You can deny me, but denial will hollow you until nothing remains. Accept me, and you will never be weak again. Accept me, and all chains will shatter. Rain's knees buckled. The ground quaked. If I accept, what happens to me? His smile was soft, devastating. You become whole. You become mine. She wanted to spit in his face. She wanted to surrender. Both instincts warred so violently inside her she thought her body might split apart. And then, another voice cut through the dream. Familiar. Fierce. Jessica's voice. Rain. Wake up. The field cracked like broken glass. The moon god's smile sharpened. You can't hide behind them forever. When the final chain breaks, you'll come willingly. He reached out. And Rain tore herself awake, gasping, sobbing. Jessica was there, holding her tight, arms iron strong. Don't let go, Rain whispered, shaking. Don't ever let go. Jessica didn't ask why. She just held her, eyes burning with a promise Rain prayed was strong enough to fight gods. But deep in her chest, Rain knew the truth. The moon god wasn't finished. And the prophecy's cruelest twist was still to come. That to save herself, she might have to become exactly what he claimed. Episode 10, The Orphan Queen. The battlefield was drowning in chaos. Silver fangs clashed against Ste. And at the center of it all stood Rain. Her hair, streaked with silver, whipped in the violent wind, and her eyes glowed with a light that was no longer wholly mortal. The moon goddess's mark seared against her skin, pulsing with a rhythm that didn't feel like her own heartbeat. She could feel the pull, the insistent, honeyed whisper that told her she didn't have to fight, didn't have to bleed, didn't have to lose anyone else. Just give in, little queen. Come to me. I'll end this. I'll end everything. Rain staggered, clutching her chest as if to hold her very soul in place. Around her, Jessica screamed orders, trying to rally the wolves who still stood against the tide. Odett's small but commanding presence was a beacon of courage, her young voice slicing through fear. Yet Rain barely heard them. The voice inside her mind was louder, thicker, sweeter. The moon god was here. Time fractured. The world around her slowed to silence, and in that silence, he appeared, taller than mountains, beautiful in a way that was terrifying. His eyes shimmered like endless night, and when he smiled, Rain's breath caught. You've run from me long enough, he said, voice like silk against her skin. You can feel it, can't you? The truth of who you are. You were never theirs, Rain. You were mine, from the very beginning. Her lips trembled. You want me to give up everything. My family, my people, my freedom. I want you to take your place, he corrected, stepping closer, and every inch he moved sent her heart racing against her ribs. I want to give you the world. No more pain. No more loneliness. You'll never be abandoned again, never scorned, never unloved. You'll rule as my queen, eternal and untouchable. Just one word, and all this ends. Her body ached to believe him. She saw it, just for a moment, herself draped in silver light, every creature bowing, no more loss, no more fear. Jessica safe. Odett safe. But in that vision, their faces were hollow, empty, stripped of choice. They weren't free. They weren't alive. They were puppets. Rain's hands curled into fists. You don't want to end pain. You want to end will. You want to own me. His expression flickered with something darker, sharper. And what has freedom given you? Pain. Rejection. Scars. I can take it all away. I can make you whole. No, Rain whispered. Then louder, with a strength she didn't know she had, I don't need you to make me whole. The moon god's face twisted with fury. His hand shot forward, fingers like claws of starlight, grasping at her soul. Rain screamed as fire lanced through her body. But she was not alone. Rain. Jessica's voice ripped through the illusion. Fight him. And then Odett, small, fierce Odett, whose eyes burned with faith no god could kill, shouted, "You're my sister. You promised you'd never leave me." The words hit like lightning. Rain's power surged, silver light bursting from her skin, colliding with the moon god's grip. She tore free, gasping, and the battlefield returned around her, the cries of the wounded, the smell of blood, the clash of steel. She fell to her knees, trembling. But inside her, something snapped into place. The witch blood. The wolf soul. The silver fire. All of it braided together, unstoppable. She rose. And when she did, the war paused. Every warrior turned to her, wolves mid-snarl, witches mid-incantation, vampires with dripping fangs. They froze as her power rolled across the field, radiant and terrible. The moon god screamed in her head, trying to drown her, but his voice was weaker now. "I am not your vessel," Rain said, her voice amplified, echoing through earth and sky. "I am not your puppet. I am not your queen." Her eyes blazed silver fire. "I am the orphan queen, and my fate is mine." The words detonated. A shockwave of light cascaded across the battlefield, hurling back the darkness, shredding the moon god's looming shadow into nothingness. Wolves collapsed to their bellies, ears flat, not out of fear but reverence. Witches wept. Vampires bowed their heads. The war stuttered, fractured, and then stopped. Silence. Rain stood, the glow dimming but never dying in her eyes. She looked at the chaos, the blood, the bodies, the broken, and she knew what came next would define everything. "Enough," she said. Her voice cracked, raw, but unbreakable. "No more blood. No more chains. From this day forward, there will be no god to enslave us, no war to define us. Wolves, witches, vampires, we will build a future together, or we will die tearing each other apart. And I will not let us die." Her arms stretched wide. Silver light poured from her again, gentler this time, sinking into the wounded, knitting flesh, soothing rage. Wolves shifted back, eyes clearing of battle madness. Witches dropped their staffs, exhausted. Even the vampires released their hunger, chests heaving as if waking from a nightmare. The battlefield exhaled. Dawn broke. Rain's knees buckled, and Jessica caught her before she hit the ground. Odett pressed against her side, whispering, "You did it. You really did it." Rain smiled weakly, lifting a hand to brush Odett's hair back from her face. "I didn't do it alone." She turned her gaze upward. The sky was pale gold, the stars fading. For a moment, she thought she saw the moon goddess, not the cruel god who had tried to enslave her, but the gentler face, the one who had once given mortals hope. The goddess smiled, then vanished into dawn. Rain's chest swelled with something new. Not despair. Not loneliness. Not even triumph. But belonging. She wasn't the abandoned child on the border anymore. She wasn't just the witch girl, or the rogue, or the outcast. She was their queen. And she would never be alone again. The orphan queen had risen.